Hey, what's up, everybody? BL 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so yeah, feeling pretty good. Trying to make a video on my other phone and it overheated on me, so figured I'd pick up this phone and try to do the video here. But essentially, talking about genocide, talking about how this phone is looking crazy. Hold on, before we go further, try to clear that up a little bit. Accidentally smudged it. I don't think I made it much better, but yeah, man, trying to talk about like just how influencers and just regular everyday citizens are having a hard time navigating the newness of how to handle the grand awakening of those who are starting to become more informed about this genocide going on in Gaza. There's an awakeness amongst the public, and then an unforgiving tone that I think could come from the people when they realize what has been going on here. It shifts what they accept as appropriate as it pertains to this conversation, this genocide, and how best to navigate around it so that you sound sensitive and that you protect your brand. I think a lot of celebrities I'm watching, I was referring to Joe Budden in his podcast, they had a hard time with navigating around what's appropriate in regards to this conversation, because they're used to approaching conversations involving Zionist Jews with a certain level of caution based on just the power and nature of the people who happen to be spearheading this genocide, and how they have so much control over our news media and our government and our financial situation and God knows what else, pretty much every damn thing. So it's like when it's them that have to take heat, there are people who are not going to be pleased with the idea that they have to be the ones to hold them to the fire, or not going to feel comfortable being the voice that holds them to the fire, so to speak. And I think that is ultimately what a lot of influencers and a lot of people online are struggling with. You've been trained to not question these people, not speak about these people in a negative light, not disobey these people even in a lot of lights, in a lot of people's minds. And they're the ones who've been exposed for doing some of the worst things we've ever seen in our lives. So do you continue to fear them based on that truth? Some will say yes. Or do you expose them or what have you? And that's what a lot of people are saying as well. And then you got a situation where those who are starting to wake up to the outrage of this thing, who finally started to go down that rabbit hole and have unearthed what is in place to learn, those people are now harboring different levels of sensitivity as it pertains to the conversation. And their outrage is going to be sparked in ways that it may not have been sparked in the past for other, in the terms of other conversations. So you navigating this in a copy and paste way may not necessarily allow for you to have the right tone to continue to be supported or listened to or even thought of as a thoughtful person. And that's what I'm seeing there is people making mistakes. In this particular conversation, there's nothing to really compare it to. You've never seen anything like this. You never had something like this take place in this fashion, to where people need to shift their mentality from don't ever talk about this to we had better talk about this and know what we're talking about. Not wanting to speak for sake of not being informed is not going to be acceptable when you consider the trauma that people who've been focusing on this have gone through, and the vitriol and the intention of the opposite side who are trying to keep that information from the people. It becomes a dynamic where those who refuse to talk about it appear as if they are part of this grand agenda to keep people from the understanding of what's taking place. And so it's not as simple as to say, I'm not informed, I have a big voice, but I don't want to talk about this. People are going to start looking at you like you're the bad guy, because essentially the bad guys don't want you to talk about this. So it's like, you need that context. That's what we were discussing in my previous video. You need to know what's there so you know how best to position yourself, so that you don't lose people in the space of your handling of such a very sensitive and explosive conversation. And in the future, people will derive how to handle conundrums like this from how people have made mistakes in this situation. But there's nothing to compare it to as of yet, but this will be the grand comparison going forward. But for those who happen to lose a lot because they navigated wrong, they're just going to be the collateral damage for the circumstance. And so that's what I see here, is just a lot of people navigating this wrong. They're not informed. They're handling it like they would handle other situations, and this ain't other situations. People have seen dead children. There are people who are passionate about this, who've been traumatized by what they've seen. Traumatized furthermore by the grandiose silence from those that they've hoped to see do something about it. And the continued support of this, making us question the morality of everyone who ultimately is in a position to have otherwise done something to stop this. And your government officials, your celebrities, different executives behind things that you often appreciate. Once you go down this rabbit hole and you realize those people have not informed you of this grandiose, horrific unaliving of people, and not provided you the proper context from which to navigate it, when you finally find out what's going on there, you become angry with all of those people that you otherwise find yourself entertained by or trust or ultimately vote for or what have you. And those who want to navigate around this and still have fans, so to speak, those who want to still have the credibility of their voice, are going to have to adjust to this rather quickly. And if they're not going down that rabbit hole to find out what's there, they're not going to be able to do that. And so that's what I see coming. That's what I'm trying to express here. It's just people, there's a certain point where you have to know when to shift your intentions and your consciousness to say, it wasn't appropriate to speak this way before, and now, seemingly overnight, it's inappropriate to not, and we got to adjust. And those who are able to adjust will make it. Those who don't will be seen as the worst people. And that's kind of the dynamic of this thing. That's pretty much what I see there. And so, like I said, there's nothing that's ever been like it before. We've never seen anything like this before. And because it's connected to so many other occurrences, because it mirrors so many other behaviors that we've seen in our country, different things that have happened, those who followed this genocide now can see where certain things were not as they were presented to us by our media. Throughout history, you could say, oh yeah, because of some of the things that we've seen, the details in regards to this genocide, I can tell you that random situation that we thought was done by so-and-so was actually done by these same people. Because the imprint of that behavior and the context that's been unearthed about their intentions puts two and two together. It's so much of that information and that context that's available to those who've gone down this rabbit hole to create a consciousness and an awareness of how to navigate the world they're in, that people who otherwise haven't gone down it don't know the first thing about. And they're handling it wrong. By design, of course. But that's what it is. And so it's important that people hear this and then go down that rabbit hole, find what's there, come to their own conclusions, and then move accordingly, because that is ultimately what every influencer is going to be responsible for. Every talking head over the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to be responsible for not only understanding what happened here, but you're going to be tasked with explaining why you didn't speak on what was happening here in real time. And many people are going to be able to get off that they didn't know, but a lot of them knew and just refused to speak. And that's going to be considered widely offensive going forward. It's going to be considered widely offensive. As more and more people start to unearth the evidence that's already been presented to those of us who've been focused on this, they're going to go down that rabbit hole and they're going to be angry at people that they once trusted. They're going to learn to not trust people that they once would have run through a wall for. because that's exactly what's there to see. And it's horrible. It's horrific what these people have ultimately done, and it's horrific the conundrum that they've placed others in by trying to force complicity to this horrific distortion of morality and humanity. And I've been on the right side of history with this, luckily enough. I just so happened to be in the right place at the right time to have time to focus on this during it. I wasn't too busy working. I didn't have a family or no kids or nothing like that. I had all the time in the world, and this is what I paid a lot of attention to during this 2-year span. I've seen more images than the average human being. I understand more of the context that's provided by paying attention to this, to a lot of what it is that we're seeing with our government, than I think a good majority of our citizens have seen. And I've been through the ebbs and flows of being upset about it and talking it through on my channel, and all that footage is here for you to see. But at the end of the day, what I'm starting to understand, and I predicted, I'm sure many times, is that people are going to start to wake up to what's going on here. They're going to start becoming informed. They're going to see some of the images that we saw in real time. They're going to hear some of the horrific stories that took place, and their whole synopsis about this country, about the surrounding world, who controls this world, and what their intentions are, is going to be flipped on its axis. And as that takes place, what they accept from their fellow man is going to shift rather quickly. What they accept from the people that they are entertained by is going to shift rather quickly. And what's going to be considered rude and uncouth and all of those things is going to be shift with the grand awakening and the grand eye-opening of what it is that's ultimately there for people to learn. And it's going to change the world forever, in my opinion. And I think that that's something that people who are trying to navigate from being successful in this era to successful in the coming era, they're going to have to navigate this properly, and they're not being prepared properly for that. They don't know how to do that, and they're going to really stumble, and a lot of them are going to lose their businesses and maybe even go through worse experiences than what they would otherwise anticipate. This has created a radical nature in many different types of minds. People are radical about undoing the entire system, and it's not properly being reacted to, is essentially what I'm trying to say to everybody. The government's not reacting to this in a way that otherwise they would, because they're complicit to the evil that's being done there. So they're pretending like it's not happening instead of preparing for it. Or if they are preparing for it, they're not doing it in a way that is conventional for everyone to see. And so people want to continue to stand on lies as those lies have been unearthed. And I think they're just hoping for the best. That's kind of where we're at with a lot of stuff right now. Propaganda only works if you can keep people separated and keep them from communicating with one another. So they're trying to figure out how to keep us from communicating, trying to figure out how to censor us better, how to make it so that our algorithms keep us from communicating or seeing the information that we need. They're trying to do a lot of different things to keep us from having this grand awakening, but the grand awakening is already started. It's already underway. So it's the beginning of the end for the powers that be, as it pertains to them having an ironclad handle on people's minds and blindly following them. I think that they've ruined that forever, and I think they're going to have to control the earth with an iron fist going forward in order to inspire complicity. I think that's really where we're at. I think it's going to be a lot more boots on the ground, a lot more soldiers out here, armed and ready to patrol your neighborhood streets, I think, just because of the nature of this grand awakening and how little faith and complicity people will have with their local governments, not only in this country but in many countries all over the world. Though the powers that be, the 1%ers, are going to have to, if they're going to control this earth going forward, they can't do it in a passive aggressive way. They're going to have to do horrible things just to maintain the order. And I think they have no problem doing so, or they're going to come to the conclusion that it's necessary and appear to have no problem doing so. That's what I think is coming. You're going to see more and more laws passed that take away your ability to speak freely and protest what you consider wrong. What we're seeing right now is what they have to do, because otherwise people are going to turn on them, and as they do, it's going to be some barbaric like overthrowings that I'd imagine would be coming their way. If I'm being completely honest with you. And that may happen anyway. So I don't know, man. I don't want doom and gloom for the country that I was raised in. I like peace in my surroundings, even though it's dystopian peace. It has been sweet, but I think it's officially over, if I'm being completely honest with you. You killed children in people's faces, and now that footage is in the cloud for people to continue to relive over and over again. There's nothing you can do to undo that. One percenters, and as they see that you've done that, as I said, now they're just pairing together the behavior they're seeing here in different ways you've handled the Palestinians, and being able to put together what happened in other situations that ultimately they were told was done by our quote-unquote enemies. And it's a lot of those occurrences, and we have to unlearn a lot of stuff that we just marked away as true, because the facts will now be unearthed about a lot of those circumstances, or the probability of them not being what we thought they were is now going to be in our faces. And so, yeah, man, it's kind of hard to hide in the light. That's really what it comes down to. I think the one percenters, the greatest mistake they ever made was allowing the internet to be turned on, allowing us to ever get to a space where we could communicate with one another without their control, and get to a space where we could pass information quicker than they can intercept it. That was a big mistake for what it is they were trying to do, because in order to keep their stranglehold on society, it required them to be able to divide and conquer peoples, and keep them in spaces where they're not communicating with one another, but furthermore buying whatever is their soul. If you deteriorate that mechanism, you don't really have that stranglehold, that complicity that keeps you in power, that keeps people just aligning with everything that you want them to do. That gets deteriorated, and now it just becomes them versus you, and all of your lies are unearthed. So what do? You rule with an iron fist. You turn into the tyrants necessary that provide you horrible reputations. You up your security, and you move around. That's what the number 1% is going to do. Move around a lot. You know what I mean? Hide. And it's like that's what they were trying to prevent. And when you turned on the internet, you opened up the door for that for which keeps you safe from being able to do so. That for which keeps you in power for being able to do so. And you could be angry at people, but at the end of the day, you're outnumbered. You're outnumbered. You can have all the money in the world. You can hire as many security as you want, and this and that. And it's just more people, man. And as they continue to get awakened to what's been going on, they become more and more radicalized against staying complicit to continuing to allow it to go on. Even for the sake of their own peace, they feel like if their lives have all been a lie, and that they've been coerced into some spaces morally that were warped, and coerced into raising their children in warped ways, yeah, they're gonna radicalize against you. It's what comes with this. And so, I don't know, man. I think it was the biggest mistake they ever made, letting the internet turn on. If they wanted to continue to rule the world the way they've been ruling it, you should have never let people get this close to being able to communicate with one another. You should have never let people have the avenue for which to witness what you've done or what you're trying to accomplish. It made no sense for you to let the internet turn on. I think they got a little fat and happy as it pertains to their mentality to say, oh, we got this under control. We've had it under control for years. This can make us a lot of money. This can allow us to spy on people. But what you also didn't realize is that the glass reflected both ways. We, the people, could also see you. And so it's like, that doesn't necessarily do what you thought it would do. And that's what I think has happened here. I think they let us see what's behind the curtain, and then furthermore, be able to pair communications with one another with what it is that ultimately they've shared with us in propaganda. And when you see those things don't match, everything falls to crap. And that's what it really comes down to. We can see those things don't match. What you told us ain't what we're finding out here. Those people are not, in fact, terrorists. They don't, in fact, raise their kids to be horrible human beings. They don't, in fact, hate me just out the right for being American. No, they don't. You know how I know? Because I communicated with those people. I talked to them myself. I got a chance to hear what they appreciate and what they don't. And guess what? I look back at you, and you know what I found? The behavior that ultimately you said they displayed. That's the behavior you display. And then I listen to other people from other countries that I wasn't otherwise in communication with tell me accounts of what their interactions were with you. And I pair that against what it is that I've been told by the people I'm speaking to now. And guess what they're telling me? They're telling me that they had issues with you as well, and such and such. And it just tumbles forward to people just waking up to say, you know what? We've been had, and we shouldn't allow it going forward. And that never would have been possible if the internet wasn't in place to put infinite tiny cuts in the propaganda machine, basically, and in the thing that made it so that everybody just aligns with whatever is being told to them by their government, by those their influences of the times they're in. And so that's really what it is, man. I don't know how to go backwards. I don't think they are able to. I have a great deal of faith that the powers that be are going to have to become hungry again, clever again, and come up with new ways of controlling the populace. And I don't know that they are from a world where they know how to do that. I think they benefit from generations past who were ambitious and knew how to navigate around the times they were in and master the times they were in. Now it's incumbent upon their descendants to master this incredible time that we're in, and I don't think they particularly are gifted in that way. You know, it's an entirely new formula that has to be mastered, and it's just not, it's an entirely different puzzle to try to figure out for the one percenters. And so that's really what I see there. It's an entirely different puzzle to figure out. How do we navigate around the internet and the vast information that's coming back and forth amongst people that brings them together? And so for me, I just sit back as one of the descendants of multiple indigenous peoples. I just say this is the presence of a living God. I keep telling people God exists. You may not see him come down from a cloud like a lot of us expect, but this is what ends up happening. That great holes in what is otherwise ironclad just comes about. You start to see steel be buoyant, so to speak. You start to see pigs fly, so to speak. Stuff that wasn't even possible suddenly is in your face. And those who are so arrogant about them being able to control everything because of the sake of gravity now have to navigate a world where gravity is subjective, so to speak. And so if you're following my analogy, I just don't know that they are even able to figure it out. I don't even think their ancestors who were ambitious and who figured out yesterday's world could figure this out. This is an entirely different problem for them. And I don't think they would have amassed all of what it is they were able to amass, or colonize all they were able to colonize, and then have the peace of serenity thereafter if this tool was in place during their times. Which is something I was discussing with my sister yesterday as she was expressing to me her concerns about racism, and that she has this idea that we could be returning to slavery as black people with the racists continuing to be on this path. I'm like, with the presence of the internet, I don't know how they're gonna pull it off. They were only able to pull that off and all the things that made that come together because people couldn't communicate with one another. You gotta keep people from communicating in order to be able to pull something like that off. And not only that, but you were in a world where that communication had not been had for a time. Damage is already done. You got to navigate damage already done, even if you do turn off the lights. So it's like it's not the same world. And I just don't know how those who are in power are going to be able to navigate this without just doing horrible things to maintain rule. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it. And most importantly, I don't know I have no idea, but you got to have a certain type of stomach for that. You got to have a certain type of hunger for that. And then you got to be able to adjust to what comes from that. You lock everything down, start doing horrible things to good people just in the sake of keeping your power. Now that takes away your serenity and peace. You don't get to stay in peace. You got, like I said, you got to keep running. You got to hide. You got to up your security to maximum, and you got to hope that security doesn't defect. It's like, nah, it doesn't. Nah, it's just not. It's not sustainable at all. So I don't know what's coming. I don't know what they're gonna do. Probably unleash another pandemic on us or something. Who knows? Drop a couple atomic bombs. Who knows what they're gonna do? But it's not sustainable. What they're trying to do is live in lies, which worked when the propaganda machine was in place without communications. You can stand on a lie. It wasn't unearthed. People believed them. They posture a certain way, play mental gymnastic games, and people just line up and just stay in their little ignorant bubbles, and that's it. But that's impossible to do when everybody has a little piece of everybody from which to reach. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And we're just seeing them trying something that doesn't work. That's what you see. A bunch of people posturing on lies. You don't see what your eyes are telling you. Believe me. Yeah, but I see that you're a liar, and it's been exposed you're a liar. And as I'm looking at my phone right now, I'm comparing what you're telling me to what it is that I'm seeing here, which is exposing you as a liar. Like, that's just a dynamic that was never in place for their forefathers, man. Never in place. But it's one they're going to have to navigate. And I don't know how they're going to do that. I really don't know how they're going to do that, ladies and gentlemen. So that's pretty much my point of view, man. This genocide is blowing up the whole world, man. It's blown up the whole world, so to speak. It's changed the world forever. It's unearthed things that have been kept secret for a long, long time. You know, it's connected the dots on different things that have been long unknown. And so that is something that creates an environment that we've never known before. And this is a first time type of deal for a lot of what is next. And so that's what I gotta say, man. I think having a relationship with God, getting closer to God in this era of your life is the most important thing for most human beings, bro. It's the most important thing for most human beings. And if you believe in God, it's time to get close to Him, man, because you're gonna see some things in your lifetime that no one has ever seen before, because it's unprecedented times we're living in. And the 1%ers who've been in control for 1,000 years are being exposed for the frauds that ultimately they've been hoping to never be exposed for being. And all of their different ways of doing things, it ain't really necessarily possible to do these things in that way anymore. And so the world is going to change, and it's going to change quickly because the information's moving faster than it's ever moved. So too does the outrage and reaction to it. Unprecedented times, and that relationship with God is most important. So that's pretty much my point of view on things, man. I'm gonna get in here, do what I gotta do, come out, try to get into a place where it's cool. Trusting God the whole way through, man. BDL44, thank y'all for watching.